Our Chief Executive to give an initial response, also our Chairman, and finally our Medical Director, Chris Harrison, before I'll open up to several questions from the floor.
Thanks very much, Steve. Is this working? Can you hear me up the back?
No.
Let's try that now. Is that working now?
No, you all need microphones.
Is that better? Yeah. Great. So thanks very much for that question, and I think I would preface my comments by saying that I absolutely understand that there is a lot of information to take in about Imperial's clinical strategy. And I suppose whenever you're thinking about clinical services and changing clinical services, it creates questions in the community mind, and that's exactly why we're holding sessions like this evening, to help you ask some of those questions and to give us an opportunity to help answer some of those questions. So the questions were around the clinical strategy, access to services, and how you will get the services that you need going forward. And we've only just released the clinical strategy. I think it's important to remind those people here that the clinical strategy is a 5-year strategy. So by the time we get to around 2020, that's when we expect all of our clinical services to have been reconfigured, our sites to have been redeveloped, and those clinical changes to have been put in place. The 2 case studies we gave you tonight were really to try and explain some of our thinking behind the clinical strategy, which is about helping you stay well at home rather than you becoming ill and needing to come into one of our hospitals. So I suppose the philosophy behind the strategy is to try and keep you well at home. But when you do need care, to group those specialist services together so that you get the best clinical care and therefore the best clinical outcomes. So when you're thinking about accessing a specialist service, and a stroke service is a great example of that, across London we've centralised stroke services into 8 key hospitals around London now. So when you have a stroke, if you have a stroke, then if you present to one of those centres and it's the ambulance service that would take you there, we've demonstrated that the clinical outcomes, your outcomes as a patient, are vastly improved by centralising those services and access to that specialist care. Now, I think one part of the question was around transport and how would you get access to those services, and I think that's a really important question. We met with Health Watch last week and we met with a group of people from Save Our Hospitals, and that was one of the key themes that came through. There is no doubt we have work to do with the transport services to make sure that the transport routes are clear to each of our sites. Some of our sites are much easier to get to than others. We're aware of that. And we've also got work to do to make sure that if we need to transfer you between one site and another, then we've got good transport infrastructure to do that as well. Would you like me to pass over now to